February 19, 2025. Arabian Sea, 0340 hours local time. The USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72, is cutting through 4-foot swells at 16 knots, 187 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz. She displaces 104,600 tons fully loaded. Her flight deck stretches 1,092 feet from stem to stern, longer than the Chrysler Building is tall. Her air wing represents approximately $7.2 billion in airframes alone, not counting ordnance, and not counting the weapons systems embedded in every hull in her strike group, not counting the 4,539 human beings living and working inside her. She is, by any measurable standard, the single largest concentration of American military power on the planet at this precise moment. And she is moving, deliberately and without haste, toward the most contested 34-mile wide waterway on Earth. In Tehran, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Joint Intelligence Directorate has had an active track on the Lincoln since she transited the Suez Canal 6 days ago. They know her position to within 400 meters. They know her speed, her course, her flight operations tempo. Senior IRGC commanders are in a conference room right now, looking at a map that shows a $4.7 billion warship and her entire strike group sailing directly into the envelope of their most lethal weapons systems. They see 4,500 Americans. They see a target that has been politically off-limits for 40 years, sailing into range for the first time in a manner that suggests something fundamental has changed in Washington. They see an opportunity and a provocation simultaneously. They are reading the message incorrectly, completely, dangerously, and perhaps fatally incorrectly. The Abraham Lincoln is not entering the Persian Gulf because American naval planners miscalculated the threat. She is entering the Persian Gulf because American strategic planners calculated it with a precision that the IRGC's conference room does not yet understand. Every mile of that approach corridor has been war-gamed. Every Iranian weapon system in her path has been modeled, countered, and accounted for in the engagement architecture traveling with her. The Lincoln is not sailing into a threat envelope. She is the threat envelope. She is the message. She is a physics demonstration, or a mathematics proof, and a political statement compressed into 104,600 tons of steel, nuclear fuel, and networked lethality. Today on Navy Dissected, we dissect precisely why the Abraham Lincoln's deployment to the Persian Gulf region is the most carefully calibrated warning the Pentagon can issue, what that warning actually means in operational terms, and why every layer of the system backing that warning makes the IRGC's threat calculus not just unfavorable, but structurally impossible. But to understand why the Lincoln's presence constitutes the ultimate warning, you first have to understand, honestly and completely, why Iran's confidence is not entirely delusional. Because the IRGC's threat calculus is not built on bluster. It is built on doctrine, hardware, geography, and 40 years of studying American carrier operations in the Persian Gulf. Dismissing that calculus without examining it would be both intellectually dishonest and tactically dangerous. So let us build the strongest possible version of the Iranian case before we dismantle it. The Persian Gulf is, from a naval warfare perspective, the most hostile operating environment for a carrier strike group on the planet. It is 615 miles long and averages 150 miles wide, which sounds spacious until you map the operational constraints. The Gulf is shallow, averaging only 164 feet in depth, which massively complicates submarine operations and limits the maneuvering room available to surface combatants trying to maintain standoff from the Iranian coast. The Strait of Hormuz itself, through which every asset entering or leaving the Gulf must transit, is only 34 miles wide at its narrowest point, with the navigable shipping channel occupying roughly 2 miles in each direction. A carrier group transiting Hormuz is, for approximately 90 minutes, threading a needle in a shooting gallery. The Iranians have spent 20 years optimizing their weapon systems for exactly this geography. They did not design their military for open ocean warfare. They designed it to kill capital ships in a confined body of water at close range. That specificity of purpose is what makes their capability genuinely threatening rather than theoretically interesting. Iran's primary anti-ship strike capability begins with the Noor anti-ship cruise missile, which is the Iranian designation for their reverse-engineered and domestically modified variant of the Chinese C-802 Silkworm. The Noor has a published range of 120 kilometers, approximately 65 nautical miles, and carries a 165-kilogram shaped charge warhead. It sea skims at altitudes between 5 and 10 meters in its cruise phase, dropping to 3 meters in terminal approach, which makes radar detection and engagement geometrically difficult because the radar horizon for a ship-mounted radar against a 3-meter altitude target is dramatically compressed. The Noor is radar-guided using a Japanese-designed active seeker that Iran acquired through intermediary channels before export controls tightened. It is not a sophisticated weapon by current Western standards, but it does not need to be sophisticated to be lethal. At 65 nautical miles range, a ship transiting the Strait of Hormuz is inside the Noor's engagement envelope from the moment it enters the navigable channel. Do the math. A Noor launched from a coastal battery on the northern shore of the strait travels 65 nautical miles to the channel centerline at a cruising speed of Mach 0.8, approximately 530 miles per hour. Flight time from launch to impact, 7 minutes and 20 seconds. 7 minutes from a button press to a 165-kilogram warhead hitting something. But the Noor is not what keeps American admirals awake at night. What keeps them awake is the Khalij Fars, the Persian Gulf, anti-ship ballistic missile, designated by Western analysts as the Khalij Fars Mod 1 and Mod 2, with the Mod 2 variant having a claimed range of 300 kilometers and a guided, maneuvering re-entry vehicle. The Khalij Fars is a modified Fateh 110 ballistic missile with a terminal guidance system that uses electro-optical and imaging infrared homing to identify and track large surface vessels. It approaches its target in a near-vertical dive from altitudes exceeding 30,000 feet. The terminal phase velocity is approximately Mach 3.5 to Mach 4, which is 2,700 to 3,000 miles per hour. This is the weapon that Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei personally unveiled in 2011, with the specific public statement that it was designed to destroy American aircraft carriers. Each Khalij Fars costs Iran approximately $3 million to produce. Against a $4.7 billion carrier, the cost-exchange ratio is 1 to 1,567. For every single % of the Lincoln's construction value, Iran can purchase 15 anti-ship ballistic missiles. They don't need to sink the ship on the first salvo. They need to hit it once, hard, in a way that forces it to withdraw, terminates flight operations, and creates the political and psychological effect of demonstrating that American carriers are not invulnerable in Iranian waters. Then there is the swarming doctrine, which is the IRGC Navy's cornerstone operational concept, and the one that most directly threatens any carrier operating in the confined geometry of the Persian Gulf. The IRGC Navy operates between 100 and 150 fast attack craft, FAC, of various types, including the domestically produced Siraj, Zolfaghar, and Ashura platforms, as well as C-14 catamaran attack boats of Chinese origin. These craft are small, typically displacing between 8 and 30 tons, and are individually not threatening to a properly defended warship. The doctrine is not to use them individually.
From alert to overhead presence in 25 minutes, a strategic positioning justification within the golden hour.
Simultaneously, launched from multiple geographically separated staging points. Converging on a single target from
DF-21D
multiple
launches,
vectors
accelerating rapidly
at
through the
combined closing
atmosphere.
speeds
Reaching
of
Mach
80
10,
to
it
90
descends toward the
knots.
carrier.
Each craft carries either the C-704 anti-ship missile with a 35-kilometer range, or the Nasr-1 missile, a shorter range derivative, or rockets, or in extremis, is piloted in a suicide ramming attack against the target's hull. The mathematics of the swarm doctrine are specifically designed to overwhelm point defense systems by presenting more simultaneous threats than any single defensive architecture can engage before saturation occurs. Iranian military publications, some of which are publicly available, explicitly describe this as mosaic warfare. The idea that individually fragile pieces combine into a lethal pattern that defeats defenses designed to engage threats sequentially rather than simultaneously. Yes, and then there is the geography again. Always the geography. The Persian Gulf's confined waters, combined with the shallow depth that limits submerged submarine operations, and the proximity of Iranian land-based air defenses, radar stations, and weapon systems on both the northern shore of the Gulf and the islands of Abu Musa, Greater Tunb, and Lesser Tunb, all of which Iran seized in 1971 and continues to occupy in defiance of UAE territorial claims. It creates what Iranian military planners call a strategic choke zone. In this zone, their analysts calculate that the combination of anti-ship cruise missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, swarming FAC attacks, naval mines, and shore-based rocket artillery creates a layered, redundant, overlapping kill web that no carrier strike group can defeat in its entirety. They calculate that even if American defenses stop 90% of simultaneous incoming threats, the 10% that gets through is enough to mission kill the carrier. And they have a historical precedent they cite constantly in their internal planning documents. The 2002 Millennium Challenge wargame, in which retired Marine General Paul Van Riper, playing the role of an unnamed Persian Gulf adversary commander, used unconventional swarming tactics and surprised to sink 19 American naval vessels in the first 24 hours of the exercise. The exercise was reset by American controllers and the rules changed, but the IRGC has been citing that wargame result for 23 years as proof that
Reviewing
their
the
doctrine
digital
is
scenarios,
sound.
this route shows the highest
On paper,
probability.
looking at the geography,
Execute,
the
intercept,
weapons
monitor the
inventory,
track.
and the doctrine, the Iranian case for effective deterrence looks genuinely compelling. On paper, this looks like checkmate. The problem is that paper does not account for what the Abraham Lincoln brought into that geography with her. And what she brought starts not with missiles, not with aircraft, but with an invisible architecture of electromagnetic dominance that the IRGC cannot see, cannot measure, and cannot defeat. Before the IRGC Navy commander at Bandar Abbas has even issued his preliminary alert orders, before his fast attack craft crews have started their engines, before the first Noor battery on the northern shore of the Strait of Hormuz has warmed up its fire control radar, and a war that the Iranians do not know is being fought has already been decided in America's favor. The instrument of that invisible victory is not a missile. It is not an aircraft in the conventional sense. It is a Boeing EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft, and two of them from Electronic Attack Squadron 5. AQ-141, the Shadowhawks, have been flying Continuous Combat Air Patrol, CAP, tracks over the Arabian Sea for the past 9 hours, with 2 more airborne over the northern Persian Gulf, mapping, cataloging, characterizing, and quietly manipulating every Iranian electronic emission within 250 miles of the Abraham Lincoln's track. Understanding what the Growler is doing requires understanding what electromagnetic warfare actually means at the physics level, not just the tactical level. Every radar system on Earth, whether it is an Iranian coastal surveillance radar, a fire control radar on a fast attack craft, or a battery radar for a College Far's launch system, it operates by emitting a precisely defined electromagnetic pulse and then listening for the echo of that pulse to return after bouncing off a target. The pulse is not random noise. It is a highly specific waveform with a defined frequency, a precise pulse width, a specific pulse repetition frequency, and in modern systems, a particular modulation pattern within the pulse itself. These characteristics are, in electronic intelligence terms, as unique and identifiable as a fingerprint or a DNA sequence. No two radar systems, even of the same model, emit exactly identical waveforms due to manufacturing tolerances and component aging. This means that an electronic intelligence aircraft flying within reception range of an active radar can not only detect the radar's presence, but identify the specific unit, its operational mode, and its current tasking, based solely on the electromagnetic fingerprint of its emissions. At the EA-18G Growler, equipped with the AN/ALQ 218 Tactical Jamming Receiver System and the AN/ALQ 99 Tactical Jamming System pods, along with the more recently integrated Next Generation Jammer Midband NGJ-MB, has been building an Electronic Order of Battle EOB for every active Iranian radar in the Persian Gulf region since the Lincoln's strike group entered the Arabian Sea. This EOB is not a static intelligence picture. It is a continuously updated, dynamically refined database of every radar frequency, every emission timing pattern, every operator behavior signature, every maintenance cycle anomaly that causes a system to drift slightly off its nominal frequency. The Growler crews know the Iranian radar network better than many Iranian radar operators know their own equipment. They have been listening to these systems emit for years across multiple deployments. Here is where the physics transforms from interesting to operationally decisive. Old electronic warfare systems from the Cold War era operated on a principle of brute force noise generation. They broadcast high-power, wide-band electromagnetic interference across large frequency ranges, essentially filling the electromagnetic spectrum with white noise that overwhelmed the receiver sensitivity of enemy radars and prevented them from detecting legitimate returns. This worked, up to a point. But it had critical weaknesses. The enemy radar operator knew he was being jammed because his display showed the characteristic snow of wideband interference. He could attempt to change frequency, switch to a backup system, or employ electronic countermeasures specifically designed to burn through brute force jamming. And critically, the jammer announced its own location with every transmission. Because a high-power wideband transmitter is about as electromagnetically subtle as a lighthouse. Every enemy direction-finding station within range knows exactly where you are. Brute force jamming traded surprise for suppression and was effective in environments where the enemy's technical sophistication was limited. This is not a useful description of the Iranian IRGC's electronic warfare capabilities in 2025. The NGJ-MB uses a fundamentally different physical principle called Coherent Digital Radio Frequency Memory, DRFM, jamming, implemented through gallium nitride, GaN, semiconductor amplifier technology that allows it to operate across an enormously wider frequency range at higher power levels.
The impact causes intense degrees. Pure velocity creates destruction without explosives.
GaN transistors operate at higher breakdown voltages and higher junction temperatures than the previous generation of gallium arsenide, GaAs. Bit devices, which means they can generate more power per unit of semiconductor area and maintain that power output across a wider bandwidth without thermal degradation. This is not a marginal engineering improvement, it is a generational leap. The power output advantage of GaN over GaAs in this application is approximately a factor of 10 in power density. Yet that factor of 10 is what makes the difference between jamming a single threat radar and simultaneously engaging the entire Iranian coastal radar network. The deceptive jamming technique that makes DRFM-based systems categorically different from brute force systems works like this. When the Iranian fire control radar for a Noor battery on the northern Hormuz shore transmits its search pulse, that pulse travels outward at the speed of light. When it reaches the Growler's receiver, the AN/AL Q218 system captures that pulse in microseconds, digitizes it with extreme precision, analyzes its exact waveform characteristics, and then the DRFM generates and transmits a return signal. Not noise, not interference. A carefully constructed lie that mimics the expected radar return from the Lincoln's hull, but with specific parameters altered. The Iranian radar operator's screen does not show jamming. His display shows a clean, stable contact and the position the Growler wants him to believe the Lincoln is at. If the Lincoln is actually at 45 nautical miles bearing 220, the Iranian radar operator's screen may show the contact at 52 nautical miles bearing 215. His fire control computer accepts this data as valid because the return signal is electromagnetically indistinguishable from a legitimate echo. His system shows green. His built-in test indicators show normal. Yet he has no indication whatsoever that the information he is feeding into his weapon solution is fabricated. The Noor missiles he is preparing to fire are being aimed at a phantom. The coordinates his computer is generating will direct 3 $800,000 missiles into empty water at a point where the Abraham
Osprey
Lincoln
touchdown.
will never
Golden
be.
hour preserved at 58
The
minutes.
IRGC
Then
battery
ready.
commander
Mission success.
will order the
Strategic
launch,
wisdom proven.
the missiles will fly, and they will impact the Arabian Sea with nothing to show for it except 3 craters of white water and a target that appears on his radar screen to have survived and continued on course. He will not understand what happened. His system will not tell him what happened. His after-action report will document a guidance failure, and his technical team will spend weeks trying to find the malfunction in hardware that functions perfectly. They are looking for a technical failure in the wrong domain. The failure was not in their hardware. It was in the electromagnetic reality being fed to their hardware, a reality that had been quietly, methodically, and invisibly rewritten at the speed of light, 9 hours before they pressed the button. This is not jamming. This is not electronic warfare in any traditional sense of that term. This is the manufacturing of an alternate electromagnetic reality. Yet the IRGC never saw the first war that was fought against them. They lost it before it started, but suppose the Growler's electromagnetic deception achieves only partial effectiveness. Suppose an IRGC technical team, working from intelligence that suggests American electronic attack operations are underway, has placed one of its College Far's anti-ship ballistic missile batteries in strict emissions control, MCON, meaning the battery is receiving data from a passive electro-optical tracking system rather than an active radar, specifically to avoid providing the Growler with an electromagnetic signature to spoof. The battery has been tracking the Lincoln using long-range optical sensors and data-linked position reports from a commercial vessel acting as a picket. The firing data is valid. The launch authorization comes down from IRGC Aerospace Force Command. Yet the College Far's launch vehicle tilts to its firing elevation. The missile ignites. This is where the Abraham Lincoln's carrier strike group transitions from the electromagnetic domain to the kinetic domain, and the architecture of lethality surrounding the carrier reveals its second layer with a speed and violence that the IRGC's wargame models did not fully account for. The Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers assigned to the Lincoln Strike Group are not merely escort vessels in the traditional sense of that term. They are networked missile defense platforms carrying the Aegis weapon system, the Spy-1D multi-function phased array radar, and a vertical launch system, VLS, loaded with a mix of RIM-161. Standard Missile 3, SM-3, Block 1B and IIA interceptors and RIM-174. Standard Missile 6, SM-6, extended range active missiles. The Aegis system is not a passive tracking system, waiting for human operators to identify threats and authorize responses. It is a fully automated combat system capable of detecting, tracking, classifying, and engaging threats faster than any human decision loop can operate. The AN/SPY-1D radar array consists of 4 fixed phased array faces, each containing approximately 4,000 individual radiating elements, which together provide 360-degree continuous coverage with no mechanical rotation requirement. The system can simultaneously track more than 100 airborne contacts and engage multiple threats simultaneously with different interceptors. When the College Fars ignites its rocket motor, the exhaust plume generates a thermal signature detectable by space-based infrared satellites that feed directly into the Theater Missile Defense, TMD, a network linking the Lincoln Strike Group to ground-based command nodes and space-based assets. The Aegis combat system receives the launch notification from the satellite network before the Growler's own sensors have fully characterized the launch vehicle. Pre-authorized engagement protocols mean the SM-3 does not wait for a voice command from a human operator. The launch cell opens, the interceptor fires. The entire sequence from launch detection to SM-3, departure from the deck, takes under 10 seconds. Here is the physics that makes the SM-3 Block 2A the most remarkable defensive weapon in the American inventory. The Khalij Fars is a ballistic missile. It follows a ballistic trajectory, meaning it arcs upward under rocket power, reaches apogee at high altitude, and then follows a gravity-influenced curved path toward its target. It with a terminal guidance system activating in the final phase to home on the carrier's visual or infrared signature. The apogee of a Khalij Fars trajectory, given its 300-kilometer range, is approximately 150 kilometers altitude, roughly 90,000 feet, well above the stratosphere and into the lower mesosphere, where atmospheric density is so low that aerodynamic surfaces provide almost no control authority. This is the SM-3's preferred engagement zone. At the SM-3 Block 2A does not carry a traditional explosive warhead. It carries a kinetic kill vehicle, KK-5, a roughly 30-kilogram precision-guided mass of metal with its own onboard infrared seeker, attitude control thrusters, and divert propulsion system. The KKV's sole purpose is to place itself in the exact physical location that the incoming missile will occupy at the moment of intercept, and then be there when the incoming missile arrives. At the moment of intercept, the Khalij Fars is traveling at approximately Mach 3.5, roughly 2,600 miles per hour downward. The SM-3's KK-5 is traveling at approximately Mach 8 upward. The combined closure velocity at the moment of impact is over Mach 11, approximately 8,500 miles per hour. When metal meets metal at that velocity, the kinetic energy released is so immense that the concept of a structural collision becomes physically obvious. Steel does not bend. Steel does not crack. At Mach 11 combined closure velocity, the kinetic energy per unit mass exceeds the binding energy of the metal's crystal structure many times over. The material undergoes instantaneous phase change, not melting, not shattering. Instantaneous transformation from solid crystalline metal directly into superheated plasma. The temperature at the point of impact exceeds 15,000 degrees Celsius, which is nearly 3 times the surface temperature of the sun.
Prep time
Both objects cease to exist as physical structures in approximately 0.0001 seconds. The fireball is visible to naked eye observers for 200 miles. The Khalij Fars, its guidance electronics, its 650-kilogram warhead, every component that was going to kill American sailors, all of it is converted to plasma and expanding hot gas 100 kilometers above the Persian Gulf. Not one molecule of that missile reaches the Lincoln. This is not missile defense in the Cold War sense of that phrase. This is not shooting bullets with bullets. As early critics of missile defense dismissively described it, this is using Newton's third law and the conservation of kinetic energy as weapons. We don't intercept threats with explosives. We intercept them with mathematics, with trajectory calculation, with a collision geometry solved by the Aegis computer in milliseconds. The KK-5 doesn't care how large the warhead is. Mass and velocity are the only variables that matter at the moment of intercept, and both of those variables favor the defender. But suppose a salvo launch has put 3 Khalij Fars missiles in the air simultaneously, launched from geographically separated batteries to complicate the intercept geometry. The Aegis system handles simultaneous engagements because its software architecture was specifically designed for exactly this threat. Multiple SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors can be in the air simultaneously, each with its own target assignment, each guided by the Aegis fire control system to independent intercept solutions. The SM-6, which carries a 64-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead for use in endo-atmospheric, meaning within the atmosphere, engagements where the kinetic kill approach is less effective due to atmospheric buffeting, provides the backup layer for threats that survive the exo-atmospheric SM-3 intercept. Together, At the SM-3 and SM-6 provide a two-tier missile defense architecture that covers both the high-altitude intercept zone and the lower-altitude terminal defense zone. An IRGC commander who launches 3 Khalij-Fars missiles simultaneously does not achieve saturation. He achieves the simultaneous consumption of 6 American interceptors, which is acceptable to the American commander because the Lincoln carries 96 VLS cells per destroyer, and the strike group has multiple destroyers. The Iranian battery fired its entire ready magazine. The American destroyers fired 6 rounds and still have 90 available. The cost exchange ratio in this engagement, where the Iranians spend $9 million on 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles and the Americans spend approximately $10.5 million on 6 interceptors, sounds roughly equal until you account for the fact that the Iranians achieved zero effect and the Americans achieved total defense. The Iranian battery is now empty and it takes hours to reload. The American destroyers reload from their own magazine capacity and are immediately ready for the next salvo. This is not a fair fight. This is a paradox.
Status change. All stations report. Reset the grid now. Confirm sweep.
Them in the geometry of their trajectory before they can apply their physics to our hulls. We fight the battle in the upper atmosphere where the IRGC cannot observe, cannot adapt, and cannot win. But suppose now that the scenario shifts from the Iranian ballistic missile threat to the scenario that Iranian military planners consider their most tactically refined option: the coordinated swarm. 40 fast attack craft, FAC, launched simultaneously from 4 staging points around the Persian Gulf, converging on the Lincoln's track from 4 cardinal vectors, all maintaining radar silence. It all running at 40 knots on the surface of a gulf that is lit up by the lights of oil platforms and commercial shipping, using that electromagnetic and visual clutter to mask their approach. This is the scenario the IRGC has trained for 10,000 times. This is the scenario General Van Riper's 2002 wargame demonstrated. And this is the scenario that the Lincoln's air wing was designed, armed, and positioned to destroy completely, methodically, and with a casual efficiency that the IRGC's training models have never
Electromagnetic
once
spectrum
encountered
flows
in
from
an
low to
honest
high
simulation.
frequencies.
The
Gallium
E2D
nitride
Advanced
manipulates
Hawkeye
waveforms in
Airborne
real
Early
time.
Warning and Control Aircraft, AEW&C, flying above the Lincoln at 25,000 feet, has been tracking every Iranian fast attack craft at its birth since the Lincoln entered the Arabian Sea. The Hawkeye's AN/APY-9 radar operates in the ultra-high frequency, UHF, band and uses a technique called inverse synthetic aperture radar, ISAR, to distinguish between surface vessel types based on their hull geometry and movement characteristics. The system does not see a smear on a radar screen. It sees a classified contact with an associated track, a speed vector, a course projection, and a threat probability score generated by an onboard artificial intelligence assessment system. When 40 Iranian FAC begin moving simultaneously from their berths, the Hawkeye's system flags the coordinated movement within 90 seconds of the first boat clearing its moorings, because the simultaneous multi-point departure pattern is a behavioral signature that the system's pattern recognition algorithms have been trained to identify. The Hawkeye crew does not need to watch for it. The system watches for them. The alert is transmitted to the Lincoln's Combat Direction Center and to every ship in the strike group via the Cooperative Engagement Capability, CEC, or data network simultaneously. The time elapsed from first boat movement to strike group-wide alert, 90 seconds. The Iranians have just been seen before they knew they were being watched. The FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornet aircraft, already assigned to the Surface Combat Air Patrol, SUCAP, mission and holding at designated stations in the airspace above the strike group's perimeter, are the primary instrument of the swarm's destruction. Each Super Hornet on a SUCAP mission carries a specific weapons load designed for anti-surface warfare, including AGM-65, Maverick air-to-surface missiles, AGM-84H, standoff land attack, Missile Expanded Response, Slammer for longer range engagements, and and the Mark 20 Rockeye cluster munition for use against multiple surface targets in a single pass. At 300 feet altitude and 450 knots airspeed, a Super Hornet approaching a line of FAC from the beam, meaning perpendicular to their course, JID can engage 4 to 6 individual craft in a single attacking pass, because at that altitude and speed, each pass covers approximately 1.5 miles of surface area.
Taking evasive action, tracers inbound. Terrain masking, watch the GPS. Pushing through, stay sharp.
Perpendicular vectors against a column of 10 FAs can theoretically prosecute all 10 contacts in a single coordinated pass lasting 25 seconds. Against 40 FAC launched simultaneously, the Lincoln can put 16 Super Hornets in the air in the 20 minutes of approach time available before the swarm reaches effective missile range. 16 Super Hornets executing coordinated attacks can engage 40 FAC, with aircraft cycling back for second attacks on survivors. This is not a fight. This is an attrition exercise. The IRGC's swarm doctrine was designed to overwhelm point defenses fixed to the ship's hull. It was not designed to defeat a fully integrated, airborne kill chain directed from orbit downward through a Hawkeye data network to Super Hornet strike packages executing pre-coordinated engagement geometries. This is not the Persian Gulf of 1988, when the USS Samuel B. Roberts hit an Iranian mine and a war scare erupted in the tanker lanes. This is a completely different operational reality. The swarm does not work when every individual element of the swarm has been tracked, assigned, and targeted before it gets within 30 miles of the carrier. The question that every taxpayer is entitled to ask, and that every mother and father whose son or daughter is somewhere in those 4,539 crew positions deserves an honest answer to, is simple. Why is this necessary? Why position a $4.7 billion warship and nearly 5,000 human beings in a body of water where a hostile government has explicitly, publicly, and repeatedly promised to sink them? The answer is not political, though the decision has political dimensions. The answer is not symbolic, though the symbolism is real and deliberate. The answer is physiological. It is mathematical. It is written in blood pressure curves and trauma surgery statistics, and it is as cold and precise as any weapon system we have discussed. Start with the aircraft response time problem, because this is where the strategic logic begins. The Lincoln's air wing operates the F/A-18E and F/A-18F Super Hornet, with a stated combat radius on a standard high-low-high interdiction profile of approximately 390 nautical miles. On paper, this suggests that the Lincoln could operate from the Indian Ocean, 600 miles from the Iranian coast, and still reach targets throughout Iran's southern third. But combat radius is a fuel planning parameter. It describes the furthest point an aircraft can reach and return without aerial refueling. It says nothing about how quickly that aircraft gets there. Nothing about the human beings on the ground whose survival depends on when the aircraft arrives, not whether it arrives. Effective response time is the number that matters. And effective response time is a function of three variables that interact to produce a hard physiological deadline: aircraft launch preparation time, transit time at tactical airspeed, and the human golden hour. Aircraft launch preparation on a Nimitz-class carrier, and the Abraham Lincoln is hull CVN-72, the second-to-last Nimitz class before the Gerald R. Ford design transition, requires a minimum of 14 minutes from alert to wheels up under ideal conditions. The aircraft must be moved to the catapult position, which requires coordination with the flight deck crew to clear the path and position the aircraft using the deck tractors, a process that takes between 8 and 12 minutes depending on where the aircraft is spotted. The catapult must be set for the aircraft's gross weight. If the pilot completes abbreviated pre-launch checks, the catapult officer confirms the launch parameters. The air boss clears the deck. Under alert conditions, this is streamlined to 14 minutes minimum. Not 12, not 10, not on a nuclear carrier with a catapult system, with a flight deck operating in actual sea conditions, with winds that require repositioning, with the controlled chaos of continuous flight operations. 14 minutes is the floor. Now add transit time. The Lincoln. In her current operating area in the northern Arabian Sea approaching Hormuz is approximately 180 nautical miles from the urban center of Bandar Abbas, the IRGC's primary naval base and command center. An F/A-18E at Mach 0.9 cruise speed covers approximately 9 nautical miles per minute. 180 nautical miles divided by 9 equals 20 minutes transit. Total time from alert to overhead, 14 minutes launch prep plus 20 minutes transit equals 34 minutes. It now considers
the golden
the
hour,
same
60 minutes from injury to surgery,
operating at
90 for
400
survival under
nautical
60.
miles
Every
offshore,
second matters.
a position that would place the Lincoln well outside every Iranian weapon system's maximum range. 400 nautical miles at 9 nautical miles per minute transit equals 44 minutes. Total time from alert, 14 plus 44 equals 58 minutes. That 24-minute difference between a 180 nautical mile standoff and a 400 nautical mile standoff is the number that the medical literature says is the difference between a soldier going home and a soldier's family receiving a flag. Here is why that is not a metaphor. It is a clinical fact grounded in trauma registry data from 3 decades of combat operations. A Navy corpsman attached to a Marine reconnaissance team operating in a coastal area near Bandar Abbas sustains a penetrating chest wound from a 7.62 millimeter rifle round. The round has entered the right thoracic cavity, puncturing the lung and nicking the pulmonary artery, a major blood vessel carrying oxygenated blood from the heart to the lung tissue. The corpsman's teammate, himself a trained combat lifesaver, applies an immediate chest seal, manages the airway, and begins monitoring. But the pulmonary artery is not the aorta. Hemorrhage is significant, but not instantaneous. The wounded corpsman has a physiological window. But that window is defined not by hope, but by hemodynamics. His circulating blood volume is approximately 5 liters. He is losing blood at approximately 300 to 400 milliliters per minute from the arterial injury. Without surgical intervention, he exsanguinates, loses 40% of his blood volume in approximately 12 to 15 minutes. At that point, his mean arterial pressure drops below the threshold for cerebral perfusion, and irreversible neurological damage begins. He is technically still alive past 15 minutes. But he is dying in a way that no field intervention can reverse. This is not the golden hour of blunt trauma surgery. This is the sharper arithmetic of penetrating vascular injury. Yet the window between savable with surgery and beyond saving for this type of wound in a healthy young combatant is between 20 and 30 minutes in austere field conditions. Do the math. The MV-22B Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, the primary casualty evacuation platform for carrier strike group operations, requires 8 minutes to complete pre-launch sequence and achieve taxiing position on the flight deck under alert conditions. The medical evacuation team needs 4 minutes to board with equipment and secure the litter patient. The flight to the casualty's location from 180 nautical miles takes approximately 45 minutes at the Osprey's 240-knot cruise speed. The patient reaches the Lincoln surgical suite, staffed by a fully equipped trauma surgery team with anesthesiology, in approximately 57 minutes from the moment the alert was issued. That is 57 minutes. The surgical window for the pulmonary artery injury is 20 to 30 minutes from wounding. The corpsman is beyond the vascular injury window before the Osprey even arrives. He may survive with excellent surgical care and some luck. He may not. The math is not.
The F-35C launches from the carrier, but can it intercept the Mach? This is the critical threat scenario.
The Osprey's transit time is 100 minutes. The total evacuation timeline is 112 minutes. There is no medical statistic to quote at 112 minutes for a penetrating pulmonary artery wound. There is only a body bag. This is not a policy discussion. It is physiology. It is the reason why the Abraham Lincoln's operating position is not determined by what makes the ship safest in an abstract strategic sense, but by what makes the human beings she is there to support most likely to survive the consequences of the operations she is there to enable. A 19-year-old from Georgia who enlisted in the Marine Corps because he wanted to be part of something larger than himself, who has been on the ground near the Iranian coast for 6 hours as part of a reconnaissance mission that will contribute to intelligence products that nobody outside the classification system will ever know about, is alive or dead depending on a nautical mileage calculation that some operations research analyst made in an office in Dahlgren, Virginia, and that an admiral approved in a document that will be retired and classified for 30 years. That analyst did not calculate 179 nautical miles. He did not calculate 181 nautical miles. Not 179, not 181, exactly 180. That is the number where the casualty evacuation
the SM-3 warhead closes at Mach 25.
For
its
the most
kinetic energy about to transfer
catastrophic supported forces are likely to sustain. That is why the ship is there. That is the only reason that justifies the risk. And that is the mathematical core of the strategic warning the Lincoln represents. This ship is close enough to do its job, protected enough to survive the attempt to stop it, and powerful enough to make the cost of that attempt catastrophically unacceptable to anyone who considers pressing the button.
The outlines show a gap, but
now,
the markers align
step
with the arcs.
all the way back
Still a blind spot.
and look
Reassess
at the complete
patterns.
system. Because what the previous sections have described as individual layers of defense are not individual systems. They are nodes in a single integrated organism, and the organism's collective lethality is not the sum of its parts. It is something categorically larger, because the connections between the parts are themselves weapons. The Abraham Lincoln is the power projection platform at the center of the architecture. She operates up to 75 aircraft from her flight deck across a full complement air wing, including 2 Super Hornet strike fighter squadrons, 1 Super Hornet strike fighter attack squadron, an EA-18G Growler, electronic attack squadron typically operating 6 to 8 aircraft, an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning and control squadron with 4 to 5 aircraft, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter Sea Combat Squadron, and an MH-60S Seahawk helicopter Sea Strike and Logistics Squadron. This is not a homogeneous force. It is a heterogeneous
USS Gerald R. Ford maintains peaceful operations at 95 nautical miles. Success confirmed.
And against a specific threat category. All integrated through a common data network that makes the information each platform collects available to every other platform in real time. The R. Lee Burke-class destroyers assigned to the Lincoln Strike Group serve as the Ballistic Missile Defense, BMD, and Area Air Defense Layer. Each destroyer's Aegis combat system is networked through the CEC to the Lincoln's Combat Direction Center, CDC, and to the Hawkeye's Battle Management System. The critical capability that CEC provides is not merely data sharing. It is composite tracking, meaning that the radar returns from multiple platforms are mathematically fused into a single track file with greater accuracy than any single radar could produce. The target's position is not the average of what 3 radar systems see. It is the least squares optimal estimate of the target's state vector, computed in real time from the combined, time-synchronized observations of every sensor in the network. This is cooperative engagement capability in its deepest form. One ship's radar can generate a fire control quality track. Another ship's missile can engage that track without its own radar ever having illuminated the target. The ship that fires the missile never needs to see the target independently. It fires based on a composite picture generated by the entire network. Aimed from the perspective of an Iranian fast attack boat trying to use radar silence to approach the carrier undetected, this capability is devastating. The boat's radar silence defeats the individual ship's targeting radar. It does not defeat the network, because the network includes the Hawkeye's UHF radar, the submarine's passive sonar, the surface ship radars that can detect the FAC's hull, wake at close range even without radar illumination, and the satellite systems feeding position data from outside the Persian Gulf entirely. Radar silence protects you from a single radar. It does not protect you from a networked organism that has 6 different physical sensing mechanisms operating simultaneously, all of them fused into a single composite picture that every platform in the network sees equally and simultaneously. The Virginia-class attack submarine, SSN, Operating in the Persian Gulf in support of the Lincoln Strike Group represents the dimension of the architecture that the IRGC most consistently underestimates. The Persian Gulf's shallow waters, averaging 164 feet depth, create challenging operating conditions for nuclear submarines. They are not impossible conditions. The Virginia-class, its pump jet propulsor and extremely low acoustic signature, can operate in littoral waters at slow speed with virtually undetectable noise levels. The submarine's primary strategic function in this architecture is not torpedo attack against surface combatants. It is the pre-targeted Tomahawk land attack missile, TLAM, capability directed at Iranian shore-based infrastructure. Every Khalij Fars battery, every Noor coastal defense installation, every IRGC Navy base, every command and control node that supports the Iranian anti-access/area denial, A2/AD architecture has been surveyed by satellite, characterized by reconnaissance aircraft, and has had its GPS coordinates loaded into TLAM mission plans that are pre-computed, pre-approved, and pre-loaded in the submarine's fire control system. The submarine is not waiting for an order to target those sites. It is waiting for an order to fire against targets already selected. The timeline from fire order received to first TLAM impacts target is approximately 12 to 18 minutes depending on range. And the first Khalij Fars battery that launches against the Lincoln is the last Khalij Fars battery that fires. The launcher site ceases to exist 14 minutes later. That is not a response. That is a pre-computed consequence. Do the math from the Iranian commander's perspective. You fire a $3 million missile at the Lincoln. The SM-3 intercepts it in space for $10.5 million. Your battery is destroyed by Tomahawks 14 minutes later for an additional $2 million in American ordnance expenditure. You have spent $3 million, achieved zero effect, and lost a $50 million battery installation that took 2 years to build. The Americans have spent $12.5 million and destroyed your most capable weapon system.
53 minutes.
This is not
the
a favorable cost exchange for the Iranians by any measure. This is a paradigm. We don't defend and absorb. We defend and counterattack simultaneously, at a speed and a precision that collapses the temporal boundary between defense and offense into a single integrated act. You fire against us, and your ability to fire again ceases to exist within the decision cycle of a single watch rotation. The E-2D Hawkeye operating above the strike group is the conductor of this orchestra, and describing it as merely an early warning aircraft.
Observe the route
is like
lines. They show the sequence of
symphony
engagement
conductor
points.
as
The markers
merely
track the
someone
progression.
who
This is
waves
key
a
for
stick.
timing.
The
Hawkeye's
DF-21D missile costs just $11 million.
APY-9
This gives Beijing a strategic 13 billion
UHF
its carrier
band, with
ratio.
a rotating antenna providing full 360-degree coverage. They can track more than 2,000 contacts simultaneously at ranges exceeding 300 nautical miles. But the radar's capability is not the Hawkeye's most decisive contribution to the kill web. Its most decisive contribution is the battle management function performed by its 3 naval flight officers, NFOs, operating the mission systems behind the pilot's seats. These officers are not watching a radar display and calling out contacts. They are managing the information architecture of the entire strike group, assigning surveillance sectors to subordinate platforms, directing Super Hornet cap stations to optimize engagement geometry, deconflicting the electronic warfare activities of the Growlers with the radar emissions of the surface ships, and routing the composite tactical picture through the CEC to every platform in the network. The Hawkeye crew sees the entire battle space. Every other platform in the strike group benefits from that total perspective. The F/A-18E pilot, holding a SUCAP station 50 miles from the Lincoln, does not see just his radar. He sees the Hawkeye's picture, the Growler's electronic warfare picture, the surface ship's radar tracks, all of it fused on his cockpit display into a single integrated tactical picture that gives him more situational awareness than any fighter pilot in the history of aviation has ever had before reaching his target.
Growler copy,
He does
signal
not
clear.
guess. He acts on certainty. Remove the Hawkeye, and the entire network loses its conductor. The The individual instruments are still formidable, but the integrated performance that makes the strike group genuinely unkillable inside the Gulf collapses into a much more limited collection of independent capabilities. The Hawkeye is not the most dramatic platform in the strike group. It is arguably the most important. With the Hawkeye in the sky, networked and functioning, you do not have a carrier group sailing into a threat envelope. You have a trap. You have a precisely engineered kill space that encompasses the entire northern Persian Gulf, inside which the IRGC must achieve something they have never once achieved in any realistic simulation. The defeat of 6 simultaneous, overlapping, reinforcing defensive layers operating at electronic speed, guided by space-based intelligence and directed by a battle management system that does not sleep, it does not hesitate, and does not miscalculate. Return now to where we began. February 19th, 2025. USS Abraham Lincoln, 187 nautical miles southeast of Hormuz, 16 knots, flight operations continuous. In Tehran, the IRGC Intelligence Directorate has updated its track on the Lincoln. They know she is approaching. They have watched her air operations tempo. They have analyzed her electromagnetic signature, though that analysis has been quietly, consistently, and invisibly corrupted by the Growler mission that began 9 hours ago and has not stopped. They are preparing a formal assessment for the Supreme National Security Council that will be delivered in 72 hours on whether the Lincoln's entry into the Persian Gulf constitutes a credible threat, a provocation that warrants a response, or a bluff designed to demonstrate American resolve without risking actual confrontation.
Route Alpha
What
has low
that
visibility
assessment
here.
will not
But it
be
avoids
able
the
to
radar
account
shadow.
for
True.
is the
Check the
invisible
tracking, noting
architecture. It will not know precisely how thoroughly the Growlers have mapped and manipulated the Iranian radar network. It will not know the exact position of the Virginia-class submarine, whose acoustic signature is indistinguishable from the ambient noise floor of the shallow Gulf. It will not have accurate intelligence on the specific SM-3 variant load in the Aegis destroyer's VLS cells. It will not know how many Tomahawk mission plans have been preloaded and pre-approved against its own most critical infrastructure. It will be an analysis based on what it can see, what it can measure, and what it can model. But the most decisive elements of the Abraham Lincoln strike group capability are specifically designed to be invisible to exactly the kind of intelligence collection that the IRGC's directorate is conducting right now. But the Lincoln's warning is not delivered in press releases or diplomatic cables. It is delivered in the mathematics of what it would cost Iran to test it. That mathematics is final. That mathematics has been solved. And the solution is not in Iran's favor. The 19-year-old from Georgia, who is somewhere out there in the operational support network of this deployment, who signed a contract and raised his right hand because he believed it mattered, who is standing watch tonight with tired feet and burning eyes and the focused professional competence that American military training produces in people that age when they are given a mission that is real and a consequence that is immediate. He is the proof that this is not a weapons demonstration. It is a human commitment. The Abraham Lincoln is not a symbol. She is a statement of will, backed by physics. Executed by people who understand that the distance between where the ship is and where the threat is has been calculated to the nautical mile for reasons that have nothing to do with politics and everything to do with the arithmetic of survival. The IRGC will complete its assessment. It will recommend caution, not because its commanders are cowards, because its analysts, even working from a corrupted intelligence picture, will recognize that the variables in the engagement equation do not resolve in their favor. They will look at the geometry, at the intercept mathematics, at the cost-exchange ratios, at the timeline analysis, and they will reach the only rational conclusion available. Testing the Lincoln is not a military option. It is a guarantee of catastrophic, asymmetric, and irreversible loss. The ship will pass through the Strait of Hormuz. She will conduct operations in the Persian Gulf. She will fly her aircraft over international waters at distances that demonstrate the range and readiness of her air wing. And then she will leave, unhurried, uncontested, and undefeated because the warning was received. not in a diplomatic cable, in the physics. The USS Abraham Lincoln is the Pentagon's ultimate Iran warning, not because she is the most powerful ship ever built, though she is formidable. Not because her weapons are undefeatable, though they are extraordinarily capable. She is the ultimate warning because she represents the clearest possible statement that American naval power has calculated every threat, answered every attack vector, accounted for every weapon system, and positioned every asset at the precise mathematical intersection where human lives are most protected and American power is most projected. She is the warning that says, "We have done the geometry. We know your weapons. We have answered them. We have protected our people. And we
Vital
are
stabilizing
here anyway,
pressures up. Keep
at
the O2
exactly
high.
the distance the math demands.
Ford confirms
Not a
OR is
mile
ready.
closer, not a mile further. The calculations are complete. The position holds. The watch is set and it will not blink. If this dissection of why the Abraham Lincoln's Persian Gulf deployment is the most precisely engineered strategic statement in modern naval history changed how you understand carrier power projection and Iran deterrence, type warning in the comments right now. Yeah, tell me what surprised you most, the electromagnetic dominance layer, the kinetic intercept architecture, or the physiological mathematics that puts the ship at exactly the distance it occupies tonight. And if you want to go deeper into the systems, the doctrine, and the people who make American naval power the most formidable force projection capability in human history, the subscribe button is right there waiting. We dissect the architecture, we prove the physics, we honor the watch. Welcome to Navy Dissected.